This One's Wife. Massive rejection? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. A number of you have brought to my attention a fairly lengthy post that has just recently appeared, wanting my observations and dissection of it, and I am content to oblige. It's posted by someone called Raturara, not somebody that I know of. It appeared on Facebook. I know that they have posted about This One's Wife in the past. Again, in a lengthy way, reasonably well written. Let's have a look at what's stated and break it down through the prism of narcissism and consider the bona fides of this material. The individual writes, "Let me tell you what really went down at Dior, Paris. This One's Wife just got blacklisted." When This One's Wife touched down in Paris, she wasn't just visiting, she was staging a return. Her team called it a private fashion trip, but inside Dior's marble offices, staff were already briefed. There would be no meetings, no fittings, and no exceptions. Sources close to the house claimed her name had been quietly flagged. A note circulated weeks earlier advising no unscheduled appearances from the Duchess. All inquiries through legal. Still, This One's Wife arrived confidently, insisting she had an appointment for a couture session, but the list said otherwise. Now, pausing there is a possibility that This One's Wife would turn up somewhere to which she had not got an appointment or was not invited as a consequence of her rampant sense of entitlement. There have been instances previously where she's behaved in a similar fashion. For instance, gate-crashing Skippy's wedding, turning up on the red carpet where it was believed that she was not invited. And for a narcissist such as she, such behaviour would accord with that sense of entitlement, the access all areas mentality. The article continues, no entry, no reservation, and certainly no collaboration. What was meant to be a private reconnection turned into a polite, silent rejection. Within hours, whispers started circulating through Paris's fashion corridors. Dior turned her away. It wasn't public yet, but in fashion, word travels faster than press releases. People inside the building described the scene as frosted calm. No shouting, no scandal, just formality. Dior's communications lead stepped forward, confirmed there was no appointment and wished her a pleasant day. For This One's Wife, it was more than an inconvenience. It was humiliation from the very house she had been chasing for months. Insiders later revealed her team had pitched multiple partnership ideas, everything from an ambassador deal to a modern Diana campaign. The proposals were glossy, ambitious, and written to position her as Dior's new symbol of legacy and rebellion. Pausing there, it's quite possible that her team had pitched such ideas. After all, this is the delusion of This One's Wife. But inside Dior, the message didn't land the way she hoped. One executive allegedly said, "We dress legends, we don't create them from controversy." After that, her name disappeared from Dior's contact lists. The polite rejection that morning was simply the final act of a decision already made. Days later, the receipts surfaced. Leaked communications showing This One's Wife's outreach to Dior had been going for months. Her final proposal reportedly included a statement comparing herself to Princess Diana's elegance reimagined for a new generation. That was the breaking point. Dior's board didn't want a PR storm, they wanted distance. Behind closed doors, they voted to blacklist her from all pending collaborations, a move later mirrored by several other luxury labels. Then came the twist. As Dior executives tried to keep the matter private, social media lit up with sudden praise for This One's Wife's Dior style. Influencers repeated the same lines, the same hashtags, all curiously identical. Dior's internal investigators traced it back to agencies tied to This One's Wife's PR network. To Dior, it looked like an attempt to manufacture affiliation. After the rejection, within hours, The house released a brief off-record statement to editors across Europe. Dior has no current or planned partnership with the Duchess of Sussex. One line, no further comment. It was calm, but it was final. In the world of couture, silence isn't peace, it's punishment. When Dior cut ties, it didn't end there. Inside the LVMH network, the empire that owns Dior, Fendi, Givenchy and Louis Vuitton, this one's wife's name began circulating on an internal restricted list. These lists aren't public, but every major brand has them. Names too controversial, too unpredictable, or simply not worth the risk. Executives across houses reviewed their own plans and quietly followed suit. Givenchy, which once dressed her for royal events, was the first to back away. Chanel declined further pitches. Even stylists who once pulled luxury samples for her received subtle warnings. Avoid association. It wasn't personal, it was protection. The Duchess had become what the fashion world fears most, a PR liability in couture clothing. Paris didn't exile her publicly, it just stopped responding, and in that silence the blacklist spoke louder than any headline. But this one's wife wasn't about to accept defeat. Days later, she made a surprise appearance at the Paris Fashion Week show, a move meant to reassert her place among fashion's elite. The cameras clicked, the lights flashed, and for a moment it looked like her redemption arc had arrived. Except it hadn't. Insiders at the show said the energy shifted the moment she walked in. You could feel the air freeze, one stylist whispered. Editors kept their distance. Designers turned politely cold. The applause that followed her entry was polite, not powerful, and while the photos looked glamorous, those who were there described it as awkward theatre. No designer approached, no stylist offered congratulations. Behind the scenes, the real talk wasn't about her outfit, it was about how far she'd fallen from fashion's inner circle. The cameras caught her smile. Paris caught the silence. Backstage at Balenciaga, whispers began to spread. The kind Paris never forgets. Stylists and assistants traded quiet comments about the Duchess, not about her dress, not about her hair, but about something far less forgiving. One source described a heavy scent. Another mentioned too much perfume, like something was being covered. Whether true or exaggerated, it didn't matter. In fashion, gossip spreads faster than fragrance. By the end of Fashion Week, the illusion had shattered completely. People who once admired her poise now questioned her purpose. Balenciaga had not dressed her for the event. Her outfit was borrowed, not gifted. The shoes, simple black pumps, were the only genuine piece from the brand. The rest had been arranged through intermediaries, not the label itself. To the fashion elite, that was a code for exclusion. No custom fittings, no courtesies, no personal touch. She wasn't a guest of honour. She was a guest of circumstance. And that's when Paris turned. Editors who once flattered her began to keep their distance. Stylists declined requests. Even photographers stopped angling for her best side. It wasn't cruelty. It was quiet rejection. Because in Paris they don't boo you out of the room. They just stop looking up when you enter it. When this one's wife boarded her flight home, the cameras still flashed. But the warmth behind them was gone. Paris had decided the Dior incident wasn't an isolated embarrassment. It was a reflection of something deeper, the illusion of belonging. She came to France believing she could rewrite her image, that couture could restore what controversy had taken. Instead, she discovered that style without authenticity is just costume. The Duchess who once captivated the world now stood at the edge of her own performance, stripped of applause. By the time the after-party ended, the talk had left the building. Within hours, staffers from multiple brands were exchanging messages about it. Some dismissed it as cruel chatter. Others said it reflected the tension she brought into every room. The verdict wasn't about hygiene. It was about energy. Paris forgives arrogance, it forgives scandal, but it never forgives when the atmosphere turns heavy, literally or figuratively. And that night, the air around this one's wife was suffocating. Then came the moment that turned unease into outrage. After leaving the show, this one's wife was seen filming near the Pont de l'Arma tunnel, the same tunnel where Princess Diana's life ended. Her team claimed it was just a scenic drive, but the city didn't buy it. For a woman who had publicly compared herself to Diana, the choice of location felt intentional. To many Parisians, it crossed a sacred line. Insiders whispered that she wanted to reclaim Diana's story, to draw an emotional parallel. But to those who lived through that tragedy, it was tone-deaf, even morbid. A senior stylist who once worked with Dior summed it up quietly. Diana's legacy belongs to memory, not marketing. That single drive, filmed or not, did more damage than any Dior rejection could, because in Paris, the city that still mourns Diana, it felt like performance, masquerading as tribute. In chasing Diana's reflection, she lost her own. Paris doesn't reward imitation, it exposes it. One editor's note in Le Figaro captured the sentiment perfectly. The difference between Diana and this one's wife was never just grace, it was truth. By the time she left the city, the whispers had turned to silence. Not scandal, just conclusion. Because in the end, this one's wife didn't walk out of Paris as fashion royalty. She walked out as a reminder that in the world of high couture, admiration cannot be demanded, it must be earned. And for this one's wife, Paris decided she'd earned only one thing: distance. Accordingly, it appears, as per this report, that this one's wife suffered a massive rejection, the humiliation of basically being turned away at the door, that she was told she had no appointment, and that basically the Paris fashion world turned its back on her. Now, if this is true, this is a massive humiliation for a narcissist. As you know, the somatic aspect of this one's wife's narcissism causes her to believe that she is beautiful, hugely attractive, sexually appealing, and fashionable. She believes that when she puts clothing on, she looks stunning. She fails to see, because of the distortion field of her narcissism, that much of what she wears doesn't suit her, doesn't fit properly. It therefore follows that she would regard herself as somebody that could be a fashion icon. She just doesn't have the body for it. She doesn't have the height for it. But nevertheless, driven by her narcissism, she certainly has the delusion to believe that she could achieve this. It's also the case that, driven by her sense of entitlement, that she might well have sought such a role. But to suggest that there was this actual rejection of her at the door, well, this piece, to my mind, there are questions about its credibility. First of all, there's a lot of detail that's provided which hasn't appeared anywhere else. And there are plenty of news agencies that have sources that would have picked up on information from the various fashion houses if this level of chatter, as described in this article, was at the level as described. Yet, it's not been reported anywhere else. The fact is, the physical door turning away aspect as well is highly specific. And if that had actually happened to this one's wife, there is little doubt that it would have appeared elsewhere in the mainstream media. Some of the phrases also don't ring true. Some of it sounds like it's lifted from a television program or a film. For instance, saying "we dress legends." That doesn't sound like how an executive would actually say something. And it's also the case that the article is heavy on M dashes. There are 21 of them. These are used in effect for a pause, but it's commonly the case that artificial intelligence uses them heavily, and seeing something that's written that's scattered with them is an indicator that it might have been generated by AI. The fact is that the suggestion also that the relevant competing fashion houses circulated lists across them to competitors, that's just not how it operates in relation to these luxury fashion houses. They certainly do have preferred, not preferred lists, but they're not going to be circulating them with other people. It just doesn't work that way. Accordingly, it's certainly something that has the ring of truth about it, because after all, we know that this one's wife would love to be a fashion icon. We know that she tried to court Dior back in 2023, and they basically distanced themselves from her because she was trying to make it known that there was going to be a collaboration. It's certainly the case that this one's wife operates with a sense of entitlement. It's certainly the case that they probably wouldn't want anything to do with her, as evidenced by what was stated back in June 2023. So what had happened back then was that Harry had worn Dior to the coronation, and Dior tweeted about it. And so people thought that the Sussexes were brand ambassadors, and the Daily Mail reported that Dior had to come out and deny it a few weeks later, and they were pretty hasty to do so. And whilst they were still getting a fair amount of criticism at that juncture, they certainly weren't as long the downward spiral as they are now. And accordingly, to my mind, that if Dior were content to distance themselves from the Sussexes back in June 2023, 2 years ago, there's no way that they would have countenanced any kind of appointment or involvement with them even now. And in the circumstances, it's a well-written piece, and it does have the smack of authenticity about it because it encapsulates aspects of the behaviour of this one's wife, including, of course, the fact that she has something of an unusual smell about her, which is something that many people have commented upon, including your glorious narrator, which I picked up on it when I had occasion to have met her. But the fact is that the way that it is written, the fact that it's not attributed to any sources whatsoever, it's just the usual insiders and sources, and the other points that I've made, causes me to believe that whilst it's an entertaining piece that has the potential for truth, it isn't. And it's just something that's been created by somebody and with the use of AI, and it's got traction on the internet. And in the circumstances, another instance of material being generated with snippets of truth and reality in order to create a story which didn't actually take place. What are your views in relation to it? Do you agree with the observations that I have made, or perhaps you do not? Let me know in the comments section. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.